Now, spelling rules. I posted about that I before E, except after C, and when it rhymes with B. All these rules. I'm not talking about these spelling rules because I'm saying, you know, I've got a thing against rules. It's because they're just not a good use of your teaching time, and there are so many exceptions, it's just not worth it. But what I want to point out is, so so you've had a traditional in front of the class lesson about E. Let's say about the rule about E. So here are all the representations for E, for the phoneme E. So let's say you did the exception, I before E except after C. So you're showing them something like, oh, look at this. On this word, is Eve, is Eve, look at this. That's the EI, it comes after C. Let's have a look at this one. Relief. Oh, so what have we learnt here? We've learnt I before E except after C, and they usually give lots of different examples to demonstrate this point. And then the child goes to their writing and they write, oh, I tore my, let's do it more realistically. Okay, I tore my sleeve. Now you get E, it's the E sound. Okay, I before E except after C, that's an L. So I before E except after C, so it must be sleeve. Woohoo! Look at that, miss! Look at that, Miss Emma! I tore my sleeve. I used the rule that we just learnt yesterday, that we spent an hour on yesterday. Look, I tore my sleeve. Woohoo! Where's my gold star? And then as a teacher I have to say, well, actually, yes, that is a representation for E. And we can look at it, we can find it. Where's the IE in there? Oh, look, it's there. That is a representation for E. There's a phonetic symbol, but not in this word. But it's after an L, so it must be. Yes, but it's not an IE there. Well, so is this an EI there? Well, no, it's not that either. Well, what is it? Well, it's actually this one. Well, I don't understand. What's the rule about that? How do I know that it's this one and not that one? And there you have it. You get a lot of children that are trying to memorize rules that don't always work, that aren't always relevant, and it actually is really annoying. If I was to teach you and give you a session and say, right, follow these rules, and they kept not working, you'd get pretty cross at me. So how about we just change the way we teach and get different results? So how about if I see that the children have written like that, so, oh, just back to that. So I would say tore, brilliant. That is a picture for or. So I'd say code map it and they'd put it underlined and they go to or like that. So that is a picture for or, but not in this word. In this word, it's actually that one. So I'm going to show their brain, and then later on I might set it up so they're actually going to use it in a real writing situation. But let's say they've done this. Now I'm going to ask them to code map it. Okay, so code map the word sleeve. We're going to monster map it. Sleeve, say it, sleeve. S-O-E-V, sleeve. So I duck-handed it. Lines and numbers. S-O-E-V, sleeve. S-O-E-V, sleeve. Monster, play it. S-O-E-V, sleeve. Monsters. O, E, V. And remember, they're the phonetic symbols. That's not a V, that's a letter. Well, it is a V, but that's just a phonetic symbol that means it's a V. O, Eve, sleep. Fabulous. Then they'll have a go, or I'll show them the word. I'll write it there so they'll code map it because they can see it fully constructed. So it's this one. Okay, so that one is the S. Okay, so that one is the O. Okay, so that one is the E. Okay, and that one is the V. S or Eve, sleeve. And then they write it 5 times, saying the sounds as they're doing it. S or Eve, sleeve. S or Eve, sleeve. And then do that for the brain to segment, to create those pathways. S or Eve, sleeve. S or Eve, sleeve. S or Eve, sleeve. And I might, later on in the Speedy 6, I might use that as an example. Might use that as an example word. Okay, so what we're doing is we're getting the child to look at those parts, but we're saying, well, this is how it is. Now, supposing they didn't look at that and they just wanted to have a go themselves, and they did that, oh, I before E except after C. There we go. So, and I can say, yes, that is a picture for E, but it's not that one. Let me just show you which one it is. It's this one, and then they can change it. Every time they're looking at the cloud to see all the spelling choices, of course, it's helping them investigate the code more. But this particular child is learning how to spell the word sleeve because they tore their sleeve. I'm not doing it in a whole class lesson. Other children might not need to see that today. If you do lots of real reading, real writing, and look at what they are doing, what each individual child is doing, you can help that child more effectively. So we are teaching the explicit phonics. We're using explicit teaching, phonics teaching, so that they understand the skills and concepts. These graphemes here, this is just so they understand skills and concepts. Like, for example, you know, they understand, okay, so here, that could be a G, and it could be a J, like gentle giant giggles. What's another concept? Well, here, if it's on its own, k, k, when it's together, we don't say k, k, we still say k. That's another concept. Oh, look, here again, we don't say fluff, do we? Another concept. Okay, so when I hear the sound s, the monster s, okay, in the green code level it looked like that, but look, here we've got scent, and here we've got grass. So we've got 3 different pictures. So the concept there is that there are lots of choices for the s sound, just as there are with every other sound. What's another one? A concept of, okay, well, we've got s there. It's not always going to be s, is it? Think about sugar. So we've got a s there and we've got a h there. When we've got that s and the h together, we don't say I'm going to the s op, I'm going to the shop. So that's a new concept. Here's split vowel digraphs, speech sound sandpig sandwiches. So this is about concepts. It's not so much about being able to, you know, because this is just such a small section of the code they need to learn. But what I want you to think is change your thoughts about in front of the class, whole class teaching. Change it to a skills acquisition process. Okay, what are the skills the children need? How can we move all the children through those skills and concepts at their pace? So you can have a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old in the same class learning what they need. Food for thought. Now, SSP kids right from the beginning get used to using the IPA. They get interested in etymology. If you just have a look at this, Macmillan, let's have a look at sleeve. So there, do you remember S or Eve? They're the phonetic symbols. S, oh, S, O, Eve, sleeve. They're the phonetic symbols. So they're looking at them whilst they're investigating. They're looking at the origins of the word. Sometimes they're not English origins, but they can also play them. So let's have a look at that E sound that we just saw.
E.
E. So they play it and they can hear it. E.
C.
C. Another, that's a different E, isn't it? So C. I can see you. That's that one, isn't it? C. How do you explain to a child which one? That's what you learn when you use SSP, because the sort of old-fashioned traditional way of teaching in front of the class, where you say, oh, let's look at this sound today, or this letter sound, and we have a look at lots of different choices. Okay, that's great, I can see the words, but how do I know which one to choose? How do I know that it's not that one in the word sleeve? And that's where your spelling rules and whatever, it's information the children don't need. What happens is, with SSP, is that the children discover patterns. So when teachers try and come in and say the I before E exception, whatever rule, the children will go, well, not if your name is Keith and you live in Burley. Keith, Burley, Keith. And so what happens is we set children up to investigate things, and when they're ready, they'll actually discover it. They'll come to you and say, oh, look what happened. So, like, for example, if you've done in the Speedy 6 and you did, making, some of the children might have done this. But because of the Speedy 6 investigating, they say, oh, okay, so what happens here? So making, when I changed make into making, what happened? And then what they do is their brains start going, when they're writing or when they're looking at stuff, they'll see liking. Oh, liking. Oh, I can see a pattern here. And that's what it's all about, patterns. The brain starts to say, okay, and then the brain sees when the pattern doesn't work. So if you start trying to teach a spelling rule they've got to apply, it just, brains don't like that as much as setting it up so the child investigates it and the child sees when it works or it doesn't work. The child is just much more involved in the process. So the child who comes to me and said, you know, wrote something about running up the hill, and then I say code mapping, and they go, hill, and I'll say, now look at it. So which is the picture for all in the word hill? And they'll say it's this one. Now, actually, what I do find is that prep children very early on, sort of term 2, if they write that, their brains say, hold on, that actually doesn't look right. Because we're looking at words so much, we're code mapping so much, that they recognise, oh, do you know what? It looks like something's missing. And that's what happens when I'm teaching teachers. I'll show them words and they say, it doesn't look right. And I'll say, well, what's the rule? And they say, I don't know, but I know it doesn't look right. Think about the more authentic way of teaching reading and spelling. But here, when they did that, the hill, and I say, it's not that one, it's this one, then I'll say, now just have a look at these words and tell me if you can see a pattern. Can you tell me if you can see something? And what about here? Can you see anything that's happening here? And they start to talk about patterns, and I'll go, right, now I'm going to show you a word. One of them is the correctly spelt word. It's got the correct sound picks according to the king. The king chose those sound picks. So let me just show you. So the word is, oh gosh. Right, which one looks right? Now, they're likely not to know that word. They're likely to go bass. They like to go but-ass, bass, but-ass, bass, but-ass, bass. They're likely to not even know what the word is, to know the words bass. Actually, look at that. It doesn't have to be a bass guitar or what have you. It could be a fish, a bass. So we've got exactly the same word pronounced. This phoneme is different here, isn't it? Here it's b-ass or b-ace, bass. So we've either got b-ace, bass, or b-ass, bass. Phonetic symbols are for the teachers, but if you were to put the monster there and say, what's the word? The children will go b-ass, bass. If you put it there, they'd go, oh, it's b-ace, bass. Because they know the phoneme, even though that stays the same. But it doesn't matter that they don't know the word. What matters is that they're recognising the pattern. If you were using this word, actually then you could talk about, well, if it's the same word spelt the same, but it's got a different pronunciation and different meaning, is it a homophone? Is it a homograph? Or is it a homograph? So why do they know? Why would they choose that one? If they're a child who's been practicing, who's been using code mapping from the beginning, how do they know that one? It's because what we're doing is we're not expecting to teach children everything. We're setting it up so that they learn far more than we could ever teach. Their brain has recognised a pattern. You know, children will say, okay, we've got j, n, t, o, j, n, t, o, j, n, t, o, and we've got j, o, e, j, o, e, j, o, e. Well, why is it this one here and it's this one there? Well, let's have a look. It can't be because there's an e following it, so why? And what I say to them is, well, do you know what? Perhaps the king just decided that's how it's going to be. Or perhaps there is a pattern. Go and find out. So how about, instead of telling children there are rules, how about asking them to investigate patterns and set it up so they discover them? My little posts about spelling rules isn't about spelling rules, it's about pedagogy.